The bottom of Shackleton crater is one of the coldest places in the solar system, minus 200 degrees Celsius, permanently shadowed, never touched by sunlight. Multiple nations are targeting it simultaneously. Same coordinates, overlapping timelines. There's no agreement about what happens when they arrive. No court. No government with jurisdiction. Every law humanity has ever written was designed for a planet. None of it was designed for this. The missions are already being built. This isn't a distant problem. The hardware exists. The timelines are measured in years, not decades. What's at stake isn't one crater. It's who controls the infrastructure that determines how far humanity can go, and on whose terms. Let's start with why the moon suddenly matters this much. In 2009, NASA deliberately crashed a rocket into the lunar South Pole. Not an accident, a test. The debris cloud contained something nobody had confirmed before: water ice, hundreds of millions of tons of it, locked in permanently shadowed craters. Water can be split into hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen and oxygen are rocket propellant, which means the lunar South Pole isn't a scientific curiosity. It's a refueling station, the first one in deep space. Every mission humanity has ever launched beyond Earth has carried all its fuel from this planet. That single constraint is the reason we've sent 12 people to the moon and none to Mars. A permanent fuel source up there breaks that constraint entirely. The moment fuel exists off Earth, Earth stops being the only place missions can begin. Mars, the asteroid belt, the outer planets, permanent infrastructure at distances we've never attempted. All of it stops being theoretical. For the first time in history, the solar system is genuinely open. The problem starts the moment two of us arrive at the same time. Picture a crater on the lunar South Pole. Two missions, different flags, both have drills in the ground, extracting the same deposit. Mission 2 warns that Mission 1's drilling is sending vibrations through the substrate, potentially damaging nearby life support infrastructure. Both teams have valid authorization from their own governments. Both refuse to stop. A flight director reaches for the protocol manual. There isn't one. No authority above either mission. No procedure for what happens when two operations occupy the same coordinates, and neither has agreed to yield. This is not a technical failure. This is the moment the rulebook ends. And that moment is the logical endpoint of decisions that have already been made. Here's what makes this more urgent than it sounds. Most people picture the moon as vast, endless, gray landscape. Surely there's room for everyone. There isn't. Not for what actually matters. Usable water ice is concentrated in permanently shadowed polar craters. Solar power only reaches specific elevated crater rims. The overlap, water accessible, power viable, covers a remarkably small area. Some estimates put genuinely usable territory at a few hundred square kilometers. The territory everyone is racing toward is smaller than a mid-sized city. And then there's the legal situation. The 1967 Outer Space Treaty solved one problem. No nation can claim the moon as sovereign territory. It never solved the next one. What happens when people start operating there like they own it? Several spacefaring nations have already passed laws stating that while you cannot own the moon, you can own whatever you extract from it. You can't own the mine. Only what comes out. No court has tested what that means when two operations are pulling from the same deposit. The legal architecture stops precisely where the physical activity begins. The lunar South Pole isn't a continent. It's a handful of camps competing over the only oasis in a desert. And nobody has agreed on water rights. The Artemis Accords, America's framework for cooperative lunar activity, have been signed by more than 50 countries. China and Russia have not signed. Both have active programs. Both are targeting the southern polar region. China's stated timeline puts a crewed lunar surface mission in the early 2030s. Russia is building independent infrastructure. This is not a conspiracy. The target coordinates are public. The mission plans are published. What you have is straightforward. Multiple actors with incompatible legal frameworks and legitimate strategic interests converging on the same small geography, with no shared mechanism for resolving conflict when they arrive. But here's what makes this genuinely unsettling. Nobody is behaving irrationally. Every space agency, every government, every mission planner is doing exactly what their position demands. There is no villain in this story. The collision isn't coming because someone made a bad decision. It's coming because everyone made the right one. And the momentum behind those decisions is no longer theoretical. Launch windows are set. Contracts are signed. Billions of dollars and decades of national prestige are now attached to missions that cannot politically afford to stop. The train left the station. Nobody noticed when it happened. And even if you remove the geopolitical competition entirely, even if every nation agreed tomorrow to cooperate fully, the governance problem doesn't disappear. Because there's a deeper implication that nobody is publicly discussing. It's not about who owns the moon. It's about who everyone else will depend on. Think about how infrastructure works on Earth. Nobody owns the internet. But whoever controls the backbone, the undersea cables, the routing systems, the exchange points, shapes what the internet can do and who can use it. Nobody owned the railroads in the 19th century, but whoever built them first determined which cities grew and which ones couldn't. Infrastructure doesn't need sovereignty. It creates leverage automatically. Now apply that to the moon. The first nation, or private company, to build permanent fuel infrastructure on the lunar South Pole doesn't need to claim the territory. They just need to be operational before anyone else. Because every subsequent mission that needs lunar fuel faces the same reality. Use what exists, or build your own from scratch at enormous cost. That's not ownership. That's something more durable than ownership. And the implication doesn't stop at the moon. If permanent lunar infrastructure works, the moon stops being the destination. It becomes the port, the fuel depot, the shipyard, the checkpoint. Every future system beyond Earth, Mars missions, asteroid operations, deep space infrastructure, begins routing through it. The first operation to build that foundation may not own space, but everyone who comes after may need permission to use it. Humanity may be about to build the most important infrastructure in its history before deciding who it's actually for. We are not watching a space race. We are watching the construction of the first off-world choke point in human history. There are three obvious solutions. Each fails in a specific way. A new comprehensive treaty, addressing resource rights, conflict resolution, operational zones. The problem, the parties who matter most haven't signed the existing framework, and every month of delay deepens the investment calculus on all sides. First come, first served. Whoever establishes operations first sets the precedent, which is just a race with extra steps. Shared governance built from the ground up, all parties at the table, arbitration agreed before the first conflict. Every serious proposal requires that one thing. But the hardware being manufactured right now will reach the moon before any framework currently under discussion becomes binding. The diplomats are still talking. The craters are not getting larger. So when we ask who owns the moon, we're asking the wrong question. The moon isn't the destination. The moon is the prototype. If humanity cannot govern one resource bottleneck on the nearest object in space, one crater, one shared infrastructure layer, then everything that follows is built on the same foundation. Asteroid mining, orbital manufacturing, Mars settlements, military installations in deep space. Each one will face the same moment that Flight Director faced, reaching for a protocol manual that doesn't exist. We've been here before. Not in space, but in every territory humanity entered before the institutions designed to govern it were ready. The ocean, the Arctic, the early internet. Each time, the technology moved faster than the wisdom. Each time, the gap between what we could do and what we had agreed to do became the crisis. Each time, we told ourselves this one would be different. The rockets are already leaving. The governance still hasn't arrived.